Crumping is fun, but movement wins games. And Cult of Speed does it best. Has Cult of Speed finally broken out? Is this the true way of the meta? Or will Orks finally receive the big burst of WAAAGH energy we need in the data slate? Now, boys, in the meantime, on WAAAGH Wednesday, we're going to be talking about the stats and the facts, some honorable mentions, and then some top player coverage as always. We're going to cover 2 lists this weekend and overall the Orks performances. So let's get stuck in, lads, because even though we're down, we're never out. So let's get into it. So let's start with the stats and the facts because we got to keep it knowing. So we have a 42% win rate right now, right along the worst of the worst. I guess we're right down here at Tyranids. Shout out to the little buggy boys down here. I still crump you, though. So we had 31 players over the weekend. Shout out to you, Gits. Shout out to you, Gits, for getting stuck in out there. I appreciate that. So we have Kult of Speed, with being one of the actual winning performing lists. And that was actually a bit surprising to see again. So if you haven't been paying attention to WAAAGH Wednesday, or you need to go check out some of the older ones, Cult of Speed has been showing at least one good performance almost every week for almost the past month, as in it's finally catching some traction. Me and myself, I've been playing it, so I'll be talking more about that because I've been playing it. Took it to a little event. So we'll actually look at this player's list and talk more about Kult of Speed. Shout out to the other guys who played too. 80% win rate. So that means even the other guys probably did somewhat well. And then we have The Hunt, which had more players, but it did have one performance. I actually couldn't find that list. So if you're in the comments or you see this, make sure you comment on that so we can cover it maybe next week or whatever it may be. And then we had 3 Warhorde performing lists. I'm going to cover one of those that I picked, maybe a little biasness of what I like to see. And then we have Dreadmob with a 40% win rate, no performances. Bully Boys 36, Green Tide 30, and then some crazy gets out there to the 5 of you guys out there that are still trying to get stuck in with more DACA. Keep it going. I think in reality, if we'll put a poll out for this, but I think in reality, what detachment do you think? This is 2 different questions, right? What detachment do you guys think will actually get the buffs from the data slate, and which ones do you actually want, right? Those are almost 2 different things. And so after I reveal the poll, then I'll give my thoughts on that. But overall for the Orks, having a hard time. Some of our meta bullies did come down, so you can see our win rate already shot up just from kind of Knights, Death Guard stuff getting a little kindled, from what I've seen. Also, there's a real big variety in the meta right now, which is typically a good thing for Orks when we're at a good point value, so we can play our normal mission way to play. That changed, between the challenger cards, secondary play, a lot of more mid-table-ish. So that means even if they're a bit elite, they can get away with less, chaff to score secondary. Sometimes it seems now. So Ork players are kind of finding their groove as to how to kind of offset the scoring, how to actually crump someone off the table, because we do it all in between, as we're not necessarily the best at either of those all the time. But when our points are just right, we have so many pieces. That's how we kind of overwhelm the enemies and get stuck in. So I still have a lot of good hope for it. From little whispers in the warp that I hear, I do think Orks are going to get some love here. So let me know what detachment you guys think are going to actually get seen. And speaking of what gets love, shout out to today's sponsor, the Baron of Dice. They make high-quality custom dice. If you enjoy our content and want to show out some love, check out the WAAAGH Tactics custom dice. So in the channel description, there's the discount code for 5% off because nobody likes taxes. So get stuck in, lads. Now let's actually talk about our paint competition coming up. Make sure you participate in that. And today's first list, we got Andres from, I think this was Italy Grand Tournament Road to Atlanta. That's what it was called. So I actually have it up here and everything. So let's take a look at his actual list real quick, and then his path to victory, right? So remember, this is live, so whatever you guys say, I'll go back and read it in between some of these things and stats and facts in these channels. So keep it going. Don't worry, I'm seeing what you guys are saying. A lot of great WAAAGH energy in the chat. Whoa! So as for our boy Andres, he brought the Cult, and finally, it's getting some love. Like I've been saying, I was very excited because it was mostly theory, right? A lot of the time, it was theory hammer. As in, it was like, well, how is this actually winning games? Is this actually good? Advanced shooting charge seems amazing for like any other army besides the data sheets that applies the Cult of Speed. But now we're actually going to get to see. So I'll just say it right now. It's true. 18 Deffkoptas is a real thing in Cult of Speed. If you've been around since the beginning of the edition, you kind of remember that it used to be a joke on the channel that it was like, 18 Deffkoptas because they didn't know damage, right? Now we're here at the time of the Cult of Speed, and we see a lot of lists that are just going max Deffkoptas, and that actually seems to be the backbone of a lot of these lists. Now, as for the characters, we have only one individual character. Again, this is one of the other strengths of Cult of Speed, which used to be, or can be, however you want to say it, is another strength of Warhorde, for example, where you can go very light on characters and spend all your points on assets. So you just have a bunch of different units, a bunch of meat on the table, wounds. It's like we talked about in the other videos. That's kind of how orcs get their toughness. So I appreciate, because a lot of times people go for trikes. Now, I'm not 100% against trikes, right? For if you're someone watching this and you're going, why are there no trikes on this? That's a dang shame for a warlord for Cult of Speed. Totally understand it for my fellow, lore-friendly gets. But as for the trike itself, it's a bit huge in Chungus. Doesn't mean I don't think you can play with it in Cult of Speed. Absolutely can. But when you start taking off, those big trikes that are taking up a lot of your battlefield, then you can end up getting more bikers, more Koptas for those 80 points. But in this case, it is odd to see sometimes that it's a non-Cult of Speed character that's the Warlord. So this brings the damage, which is another one of the weaknesses of Cult of Speed. So we have Beast Boss, 2x10 Beast Snagga Boys, 2 trucks, 1 Boom Daka Snaz Wagon. Love that small arms Daka skirmishing one. It has an aura of -1 to hit within 6 inches in melee. I think it's actually within 6 inches, you just -1 to hit. Sorry, I said a melee. But typically you're looking for the melee counter with that piece. Then we have obviously the 3 big bricks of Deffkoptas, 1 minimum size unit of Gretchen, and then 1 unit of Commandos. Now, if you've seen me or heard me say stuff from other videos or in segments, whatever it is, you probably heard me say that obviously Mandos lead the way. I've been a fan of the Mandos for a long time, but also currently I've promoted and showed and been a favor and used lists that don't have Mandos. And I always like to tell people that it's contextual. What terrain are you playing into? You know your meta if it's quite infiltrator heavy, and what detachment are you yourself playing? Cult of Speed is one of those detachments where I don't think I've ever made a Cult of Speed list in a serious manner without Commandos. It's just too easy to jail. How the list kind of plays is you need to take up table space. That's its strength, right? And so in that case, Mandos kind of give you that capability. Even when you lose the deployment matchup, putting Mandos somewhere where they're still occupying enemy territory and space still matters. But we'll talk about that more in the future. So remember, play your Mandos, play them a little aggressively always. Then we have 2 custom boosted Blastas. Little controversial. Not that I'm questioning to get it all, but typically, just like in the video I just showed, Cult of Speed video, then breakdown, I said this was my least favorite buggy. Still think that's justified. Argue, fight me about it. But it's all it does necessarily shoot someone, and then that unit is -1 to hit only in shooting, right? Which someone filled me in after the video, like, hey, it's only in shooting. Yeah, that's true. It's only in shooting. So it's even worse than I thought in the video. That being said, there are those matchups where you are going to want to go out and ping -1 to hit on one of these enemy units that you know is going to pop out and try to pick up your chaff, your crap, right? Because these buggies work as kind of like one of those crap units for 70 points. For 70 points, just about nothing other than a World Eater's Chaos Spawn on the juice is going to punch out an Ork buggy reliably, especially if they know they can do a 4-up invuln or even shoot it out for any sort of equivalent point cost, right? Very unlikely unless they're spending a lot of CP and army wide rules, right? There's ways you can stack it, but then a 4-up invuln can just swing it. So that is what I mean when I say it takes more assets out of the enemy. So if you can -1 to hit one tank, now the enemy might have to line up 2, which sets up your entire Cult of Speed. How it works: you pull enemies into firing land, you pull enemies into charge range, you pull enemies into getting shot and charge range. You make trades on their cheap trash skirmish assets. 1 custom boosted Blasta can probably still, by chance, knock out a Space Marine scout unit. Not always, not reliably necessarily, but still, that's what I'm talking about. That Scout Marine unit isn't doing anything, for example. So this is how it goes off. I don't say I love it, but he made it work. So whenever I show you any of the videos, make sure you take it into consideration, but don't need to copy and paste, right? 2 5-man units of Storm Boys. Just because having more infantry to move through terrain to really get those places you need them to get that the buggy can't because they're giant bases. Or like you're going to see these bikers that we're going to be talking about and the Deffkoptas themselves, just more stuff fast, getting in the enemy's way. It's fantastic. You can block heroics with this crappy unit that you want to get charges off with other fast units. You can throw grenades, all types of things. Then you have 2 units of tank busters. So those 2 units of tank busters, you know, when I was looking at it, typically they're probably both just going in one truck. Of course, like I've told you before, you can bring a Matt, get +1 to hit. He didn't. I do think the tank busters go a long way. In the meta where it's at right now, you need to at least be able to say, well, I'm going to just really nail that one tank that's giving me problems as the perfect profiles into my units. I need to slow my attrition rate. Tank busters help you do that. So even though they don't get their point values, right? Their army rules from this detachment, you know, the tank busters on their own serve a role that the Koptas don't. Someone asked me a good question. They said, well, what about just the Koptas themselves performing the role that the busters want to do? You get sustain, you can do lethal. Like, why wouldn't I just rely on that? And the answer to that is, well, there's 2 up armor save units that typically you just really need to actually get the respect out of for being able to get pulse with rocket 3. So that's one core example in that case too. You know, the Deffkoptas simply aren't reliable, even though I know tank busters aren't right. Over this weekend, I shot a tank buster unit and I got absolutely 0 hits with like 14 shots. Whatever. Right? I was just like, it happens. And so I get when people are like hesitant, but mind you, there are those units that just the tank busters can actually gain the respect out of and take to that save that needs to be killed. Because if something has armor of contempt and is in cover and you threaten them with a Kopta, they're like, yeah, whatever. Then we go to 3x6 bikers. Another thing that some people might think is controversial, but you know, the meta is full of 3-wound infantry. You would think I can just pick these guys up. May be the case, but what also may be the case is that there's just too many wounds on this field. Especially, you got to remember, you're calling the wall at some point. Everything's getting a 5-up invuln. These guys can react to move and even get closer. You're already filling space with the commandos, for example, right? If you get that first turn deployment, make just a big dumb line across the deployment zone. None of your infiltrators are coming, none of your scouts are coming, but I'm coming at you, right? And that's what this list is really trying to hem itself in on, is just a lot of ablative wounds. Right, I have a bunch of Kopta wounds, I have a bunch of biker wounds, and then I have the buggies plus the infantry themselves. So a little bit of melee from the beast bosses and a bunch of Kult of Speed stuff from here. So happy to see that there is a respectable amount of Kult of Speed. Like I said in the other videos of how to play a Kult of Speed, you know, the support units act like a cartilage to your list. It kind of holds it together. So it's not just Kult of Speed units just acting wild and reckless. So let's take a look at this Gitz path to victory, because I think context matters. So in his very first matchup, let's go to see what this Gitz getting into. We have the Tau Empire with Monka. So ethereal, 3 big units of broadside battle suits, 2 hammerhead gunships, 2 units of pathfinders, 3 units of skyray gunships, and then 3 units of stealth suits, followed by 2 Vespid. So luckily recently got a rep into Tau. Now, what it is for Tau here is, you know, even from anecdotal, but just by knowing how Tau works, that early game, your Koptas 4-up invuln, right? That kind of ablative wounds where they have damage 3 or they have D6, they have 2. Giving them a 4-up invuln, you're going to draw a lot of these Tau assets to end up getting in range. Now, Tau do have the assets to keep you off them, right? Which can be somewhat annoying. For example, they have the cell suits, which have their infiltration. They can also put Vespid into deep strike and then come down and get move blocking paths ways of you if they decide to. Pathfinders can still get up the field. So they have ways to slow you, but this is where I spoke about the buggies. The buggies will run up to one of these Tau units, boom, -1 to hit, run up to the little chaff that's in the front, flamer it with its twin-link flamers that it actually has right up on it, and then the enemy has to get into the firing lanes. Tau has to get into firing lanes to respond to this buggy before the buggy just decides it's going to start charging into their lines. And so then in that case, this is kind of how the game went. Anecdotally and typically is how I would see this going. The pressure that it can bring, the actual how much a focus fire Tau has to do means that you get just enough stuff downfield anyways, and they don't have that 2-up armor save, armor of contempt issue, but still you can see low scoring. And in my opinion, you know, again, anecdotal to a degree, is because Tau can keep that off you, that space. that you're just like, okay, I got to kill some of your stuff, kill some of these screens, bait you out. Okay, now you're close enough that I can shoot advanced charge, call the wall, everything right on your face. And then I sit on that invuln and I'm just in the mid table and you can't dig me out. And then I do it again and I hit you again. But it does kind of come down to that because they can just clear you off objectives on some of those missions. So then it's really about, okay, now you got to, like we talk about when you're aggressive, take your chunk of flesh, right? Kill them, knock the teeth out first, get the first hit off. They'll take something from you, and you're constantly just lining up for that one big counter punch. But you can't lose more than them, and you can't lose it first. So let's move on, and that's matter for Tau a lot, in my opinion. So then we go into the second game where he was hot, right here, right? When I'm getting a 100-point win right here on this Eldari. So we have Eldari Warhorse. We have, do you guys think it's dumb that I do these weird tones of voice? I don't know why I do that. It's just, I guess because I hear the books, audio books, and then all of a sudden when I hear them, that's how I imagine it. Am I weird for that? You guys probably do it too. I'm just gonna assume that. So we got Ethereal, Fugan, Janzar, Slilax, and Magan Raw. Dang, I'm impressed that I even can say those names with my orky tongue. We have some Void Reavers, Storm Guardian, Wave Serpent, only one unit of Dark Reapers, a Falcon, 1 unit of Fire Dragons, small unit of Howling Banshee, Strolling Scorpions, 3 5-man units of Swooping Hawks, and 3 Warp Spiders. So he did have the movement, but this is where Cult of Speed shines, right? Those bikers are running these guys down. They have the little small arm dock of chaff where these guys can just go off. You give those bikers sustain, that could be a problem. Giving those bikers Lance into any of these Eldar units. Ooh, the volume of punches wounding them on true is just disintegrating them. So even if a unit is diminished to a certain degree from the orcs, they can just end up punishing Eldar. But you got to be aggressive, right? Like I said, with those Mandos are super important. You got to get them up the field and start getting in the Eldar face, controlling the board space, because another thing Cult of Speed does well is stopping the reserves. Right. So shout out to him for this Eldar game, putting up a fat 100 points. I'd definitely like to see what the mission was for this one. But when you have that many bikers, right? You have that many bikers, that many just buggy stuff running up the field. Eldar has nowhere to go. You're constantly getting line of sight on them, constantly possibly attempting charges. You'd be just hunting the little pointy ears. We got third game 3. He's on a roll here. He comes out with another 99-point game, but this time into Mortarion's Hammer. Yep, Mortarion's Hammer was getting it. So we have 2 Lords of Contagion and a Lord of Virulence, 2 units of Death Shroud Terminators, 1 floated bloat drone, triple floated bloat drones with heavy blight launchers, 3 Mephitic blight haulers, 2 units of Plague Burst crawlers, and then 2 units of Poxwalkers. This again, not now. People would confuse this when I'm saying be aggressive as to like just throw all your assets up the field. It's not what we're saying. Typically, with this Cult of Speed list, you're actually going to deep strike probably 2 of those Deffkoptas units, unless the enemy's aggressive on you, right? If they're aggressive on you, you might keep on the field. But in this case, for the Death Guard matchup, this is about creating space, picking up these Poxwalkers with your non-consequential units, pushing them back, their reserves back, which is something, like I said, Cult of Speed is good with doing. You can use Storm Boys for that to run up the field. You can use your own buggy while it's running up and giving something -1 to hit. You can use your own deep strikes, obviously, your strategic reserves. If you have a Shock Jump Dragsa, you can use that as well. But because you have all these dumb chaff fast units you can throw up the field, but you're not throwing them up the field to do nothing when they have Cult of Speed keyword. These bikers, these big bricks of bikers, these buggies can kill these small units that they're skirmishing with. Not to mention they have reactive moves, right? So when the enemy is coming to get closer to you to react to your buggy, a lot of times Orc players only think, well, I can only move backwards to be safe. Why would I want my big stupid buggy to reactive move? It's not going to be able to hide ever. Yeah, but if the buggy's playing the edges of the table and your buggy can reactive further up the field when the enemy's closing the distance on him, well, you can push out his strategic reserves, his deep strike when it's his turn to go, right? So that's where you can end up just saying, well, I'm going to push your Terminators back, fight in this get in this fight where I can just touch all these blight launchers. Now, blight launchers are potent to some bikers. They would be, which is why you don't take the trike, in my opinion. Not that it's bad, not that you can't, right? But that's what you're giving up if you do bring the trike. You might be able to just boom, get in their face even faster, and it doesn't matter. but it might be the case that you're just you can't hide, right? And in this case, what's really important is you got to just touch these guys. They have blast, boom, right? So that's why to some, if first glance you say, wow, you did that to Death Guard. Well, if I can run down his Poxwalkers and his Blight Crawlers, Plague Crawlers are in the back field, not really that important to me. I can run up and just touch these Mephitic Blight Haulers. The floated blow drones with heavy blight launchers for blast, and that means I'm really just focusing on killing the Mephitic Blight Haulers, the floated bloat drone. In that case, so there's ways that you dissect these armies when you actually have a little bit of knowledge on what they can do, but also what your army can do. So board control in that way of, well, your Death Shroud might be horrific to kill, but if I can drop you in a dumb spot in the back of the field or right in the open and you don't have cover, now you're susceptible to all my stuff. And that's how Kult of Speed rocks. So great job, 99-point win there. And then we go into his 4th game. Now this is where he takes his loss. Shout out to all the gets, right? And shout out to chat right now. It's popping off right now. Impressive. Shout out, thanks for the love, chat. So we have his first launch, which was the Kroot hunting pack. Yeah. So I guess it was, at least a little cool because at least you got to see some melee. So let's take a look at this, and I'll talk about a little bit of the Kroot hunting pack and the rules and what to look out for. So we have Commander Shadow Sun, followed by Commander and Enforcer Suit. Again, something Tau does good, which again, anecdotally, recently this weekend just happened where I played Tau. Very similar thing. He only had one character on his list, and he had a bunch of stuff. So in this case, 180 points, boom. So he's going to have just a lot of assets. 2 units of Carnivores, triple units of Hammerhead gunships, triple Kroot Rampagers, 2 Kroot Riders, 3 Skyray gunships, 1 stealth battlesuit, and a Vespid unit. So real quick, let me just say what this hunting pack even does. I had to take a look real quick because I'm probably not too familiar with most of the gets, but in short, Kroots, when they make an attack, you add 1 to the hit roll. If the units below have strength, it's 1 to the wound roll. So that's decent. They get a 6-up invuln from melee attacks, and they get a 5-up invuln against ranged attacks. And then the important unit in their data sheet, typically the Orks, personally, what I had to look out for were these Kroot Rampagers. So what they do is, at least for their Kroot line breakers, is actually the important thing that I noticed was when it ends a charge within engagement range, you roll on a 4+, it's D3 mortal wounds. And if it kills a model, then they have to take battle shock. Oof. Not to mention, they have a bunch of attacks where, like we've always said before with Orks, it's not that you necessarily need good AP and stuff, you just need a lot of attacks. So that's kind of like their meat / their pressure, their combat, their combined arms asset. They have access to like giving an additional armor penetration with some conditions of the Kroots themselves, and the units themselves are eligible to shoot and declare a charge when that unit has falls back as well. So Kult of Speed, like I said, it's not that you're really that good at killing. So there are times when you're like, well, I'm going to kill something and then hurt something and then lock that thing down, diminish its ability to hit me back because I've touched it. Well, these guys want to fall back anyways and do stuff. They want to run into you when you close that distance, and they have a lot of chief chaff, a lot of just ablative wounds on their unit as well. So it could be very much that they played the aggression game as well. The Kroot player himself, mind you, they actually have long-range firepower to assist with these hammerheads, so they don't have to only be baited into either fighting or into just shooting. They can just send out little skirmish fighting units that are close points, and then when you do bring out your shooting assets to respond, they have their own long-range ones. So this would be a difficult fight. Definitely was for me in that case. And so that no harm, no foul there, right? You're in round 4. A lot of other players have already gone 3-0. Really odd army on the field, so great job anyways. But I just had to call that out. It just happens at events where you're just like, what's happening, right? And they have other abilities that are just general Tau, right? And they're also saying, yeah, they have access to stealth and -1 to hit. So that would mess up all of our shooting. That summons a big issue for Deffkoptas. If they're hitting on 6s, then you're essentially just relying on getting within 9 and then using sustain 2 to offset that, because otherwise you're just nothing. And like I said before, they're not really that reliable you know, if tank busters aren't reliable, I'll tell you now, Deffkoptas is even less reliable. You know, so yeah, that being said, great job. Still overall good, and you know, at least you got to get stuck in and not just get shot off the table in that tile matchup, right? And Skyrays get to reroll against flying vehicles. Yes. Yeah. Good shout out for that too. I don't even know. I forgot that. Yeah. Skyrays get to freaking reroll wounds. So that was even better. But now we move into his last round where he got a big W after this. Going into Necron's Hypercrypt Legion. So we have good old Necrons with their uppy downy shenanigans. One Nightbringer, one Void Dragon, one Hexmark Destroyer, a Silent King, Canoptic Reanimator, a Spider, Death Marks, 2 of them, a Flayed one, 3 individual Locust Destroyer, and then a fat old Tesseract Volt. Now, this thing actually crumps, right? This thing actually crumps, and it can move up and down as well. So it looks kind of memeish at first, but no, it shoots, it fights, it does everything kind of relatively respectively. You have the Silent King near it, so it can get buffs. It's a very real list. The Katans themselves, the Nightbringer is super tiny, so you can fit anywhere. If you create space for him, then he just marches his way up the field. But these guys are, you know, overall susceptible to getting this, you know, dismembered as in all of its scoring assets. And because it wants to uppy downy, the Cult of Speed is like, well, I'll just push all of your good stuff back with all my trash and then swarm the middle objective so you can just shape pop shots at me from far away, but you won't combine arms assault me here. If you let Big Boy drop into the mid table, that could be a problem. He's 2 up armor, 4 up invuln, about like 25 wounds or something like that. He fights, he shoots, and the Silent King himself. So this is very much about I just get stuck in hyper aggro, bikers, Koptas picking up the small chaff units so you can't score his secondaries. And clearly it ended up working because you can do damage with Cult of Speed into these units, right? But it is typically better to just say, well, I'm going to kill your other stuff so you can't score and only kill a couple priority targets that might kill me too fast. And typically the Tesseract Vault ain't going to be that unless you can do a lot of mortals or a bunch of units to jump it, right? So maybe if you can line up the Beast Boss and the Tank Busters on them and mortal wounds from some position, stuff like that. But nonetheless, I think that game was one off board control. So that being said, shout out to Andres. Can we get a wall for him in the chat? We have 1 Beast Boss and a 10-man unit of Beast Snagger Boys to give that wall some value. Only 2 trucks, which one was full of 2 Tank Buster units and one was full of the Beast Bosses. 1 Boondocka Snaz Wagon. 3 big bricks of Deffkoptas, 1 minimized use Gretchen, 1 unit of commandos with a couple special weapons, 2 custom booster blasters, 2 trucks, 3 big bricks of war trikes, and like I said, 2 tank busters. So and 2 storm boys. So that being said, can we get a wall in the chat for this get? And we move on. So before we move on, I'm going to read some chats because chat's been popping off right now. And thanks for some of those insights, chat, like we were saying with the Tau. There's a lot of rules, so sometimes I don't remember all the rules, but yeah, thank you. He says, Jay Hune, what's up, dude? $7 super chat again. Super support. Whoa, thank you very much, you get. He says, they'll never take away our sus 2. Whoa, 18 Koptas, baby. Yeah, you remember from when the Koptas were a meme, right? And now they're a real thing. They're an actual detachment focus, and they have sustain too. I always try to pull it off every game. I don't care. I'm trying to always use that strat. It is absolutely hilarious and fun. Use it with your buggies. Use it with everything. Sometimes it does absolutely nothing. I've had my Koptas completely whiff and do nothing out of 19 shots, no 6s. That's okay. I don't care. I will do it again. It's a fantastic roll, and it's always fun. So, yeah, shout out to you, Jay Hune, and thank you for the super chat and all the support as always. You've been around for a hot minute, long time. Super supportive. Thank you very much, you get. Very humbling as always. So let's get some wahs and gases in the chat for Jay Hune. And then we also got Tyler Howells with 5 gifted Wall Tactic memberships. Whoa, thank you very much for that, Tyler. Working on them after action reports and next layer of content so it can be worth it. So thank you for that, you get, and it means a lot. So, thank you for him to get some gases in chat for that. Very supportive of you. Very humbling as always, you get. So thank you for the love. Thank you for the chat. And we'll make content always worth it, you get, I promise. The other thing that's worth it is Warhorde. So here we are at the Bendigo Open with Michael and his Warhorde. Now, it's been a little while since I did Warhorde, because a lot of people knew what it did. It was kind of leading the pack, but Then we seen Warhorde was sitting at like a 36% win rate. Now I will, and I did, directly blame that, it was Death Guard a lot of the time, having a hard time, giving them a hard time. Knights, I know we can break their back, absolutely, but at their old point cost and rules, it was a little too inefficient. So that was just giving Orks a hard time sometimes. But now we've had a breakthrough. We're getting stuck in again, right around the corner with stuff that's changing. So we want to see where Warhorde's at, kind of at that baseline for the majority of the Ork player base. So this is just one of the lists that caught my eye because it had some of the tweaks and changes that I actually mentioned in the video when the last dataslate happened. When I was like, well, what are some things you can tweak towards? And then there's some stuff that are just him being a cunning get. So let's take a look at Michael's Warhorde list. We have a Boss Nikra. Now, Boss Nikra is someone that I'm actually directly hoping comes down in points, right? I don't know that for a fact, so don't get all excited assuming just because I said that that's what's going to happen, right? But I'm just saying that I do really, really want Nikra to go down to like 80 points. I think that's super reasonable, right? I think Karn is like 85 points, right? Karn, he gets up, he has 3 damage, he has like base 9 attacks, he has access to sustain, he has access to his Zerker abilities of surges, he's epic, right? So I'm comparing an epic character to an epic character. It's fine. I'm not saying be as good as Karn necessarily, but for points, god dang, what's going on here? So yeah, hopefully let's get Snake Rod down 15 points. GW, relax. Then we have, but nice to see, right? Nice to see, because the argument here is, well, I don't really play the edges of the table secondaries as much anymore. So what am I bringing him here for? I think he brought him for the infiltration and for the secondary game, both. He's still a good sabotage, right? He can still do good secondaries. I'm just saying. So, Boss Nikra, 1 Beast Boss, triple War Bosses. 1 War Boss has Follow Me, lads. Absolutely love it. And then Zagra Wartsnagger. So then we move on to a 20-man unit of Beast Snagger boys. Whoa, that's what I've been saying, you guys. That's totally legit. I've been saying it's totally legit, not just because this event, because this one get. We've seen it in the past as well. It's an excellent tech piece that he went into, and it always doesn't always require the gas backup. And the difference in this package than something like 20 boys and a war boss and a pain boy is still getting the feeling of pain, not paying for a character for that. So you're cheapening it on that. And for the point cost difference of 170 for 20 points to 190 for the Snaggas, you're just getting more value for your buck and your bang, and you're still playing Warhorde, which is where the Beast Boss shines. Plus, this whole unit gets critical sustain 5+. Crazy. But you still want a 10-man unit of good old boys for that sticky objective. 3 trucks, and then 1 battle wagon. It has the Ard case, all the fixins, and then the zap gun. I bring the zap gun too because it's just fun, and it saves you time rolling dice. And it does have Ard case because that's what you need it for that center, just staging up with this big brick of lads. 1 unit of Bricker Boys, and then 2 units of 5 Flash Kits. The big unit of Gretchen to go right alongside Zod. Remember, in this detachment, we got Here We Go. So that means Zod's going to be just hoofing it up the field. Just crazy. +2 to advance and charges. So Zod's already moving 12 on the wall. So, just getting right deep into the enemy lines when it's time to go. 2 minimum sized units of Gretchen. Now you can always take one of those and throw them to reserves. That's pretty nice in a melee matchup. Might use them as a screen, or in those pressure matchups where you really got to pressure the enemy. Can't let stuff get behind you. Double Grots in your backfield. Then we have the 5-man unit of Knobs. So clearly you can see we have 2 independent SWAT teams here. And then we have a big brick of 10 Knobs and a 5-man unit of Storm Boys. So for the 3 trucks, you're going to get 10 Knobs in one of those trucks. The Breaker Boys, the Flash Kits in one of those trucks, 5 Knobs, and the other Flash Kits in the other truck. So good fundamentals here. Got the meat and potatoes of the Ork Codex, which is a 20-man unit of battle line. Love to see it. Hate to see that other armies are doing the mobs better than us right now. So GW need to fix that. But we have a bunch of different just little melee missile shootings, skirmishes. Love to see it. So let's look into the matchups he actually went into, because I think that's what everybody really wants to see. All those gets we're familiar with. And he did bring what I thought what was interesting here, like I was just talking about before, is he did bring an infiltrator for Zagra, but he didn't bring the whole 10-man unit of Mandos. Right? Might have felt like it just cost too much or too big of an asset, easily killed. Unsure. There's always different arguments here, but still bringing that infiltrator for Zod. You don't want him to easily just get blocked or get initiatives on. So let's take a look at it. The path to victory, as always. I was about to click that. Okay, let's move. So his first matchup was the Renegade Raiders Chaos Space Marines. So for their warlord, they had Fabius Bile. Now, if you don't know, I'm just gonna tell you, I actually like Fabius Bile. Not into too much chaos stuff. Actually, he's the only guy I like, but good, decent character, funny, and he has decent rules in this game. So I'm thinking it's a melee, going to be a melee faction here, detachment. We have 5-man a dark commune, just one, with a enhancement. We have a demon prince with wings, and then a lord discordant on Hellstalker, Disco Lord, baby. Just one 20-man unit of cultist mobs, and then a 10-man unit of cultists. 1 5-man units of rubrics, a big 10-man brick of chosen, 2-man unit of obliterators, 3 big chaos bikers, a chaos destructor, forge fiend, and 1 chaos rhino. Quite elite, like most CSM lists. Not much shooting really on this list other than a chaos destructor, which is low volume, and then you have the obliterators that do have the options of different versions of indirect. They can do once per game. So it is potent enough to like respect, keep a lookout. Respectable damage 2 profile, respectable damage 4 profile. The chosen, essentially just like a big elite infantry unit. If you've never seen it, can advance and charge, fall back and shoot and charge. I think shoot and charge, but it can definitely fall back and charge at least. And they have 3 wounds of pop, but they're only 4 T4 guys. So quite squishy, all this stuff. The bikers, nothing really too meaty on that list. Typically, I would say orcs typically do have the juice for this. The one thing is this list can get initiative off on you. And so that's another one. Only a 58 point score. So I'd like to see what the mission was. Not too often you see the Renegade Raiders running around anymore. So it might be, the familiarity of that list. Then we go into his second matchup, which was into a Blood Angels list, the big A. So we have Captain with a jump pack, Commander Dante, Le Martis, Lieutenant with combi weapon, and the Sanguinor. I just like saying it like that, even though I hate that guy. 1 intercessor squad, 2 5-man units of assault intercessors with jump packs, 1 big brick of Death Company Marines with a jump pack, 2 gladiator lancers, 1 infiltrator, 2 units of sanguinary guard, and then 2 units of scouts plus 1 Caladius assassin. Now, Caladius assassin is actually annoying as Warhorde for the matchup, right? That could be a problem. When you're trying to be like, well, I'm just going to get up on my go turn and get up in the face of this git. I have to deal with that little one. So typically, right, the Blood Angel matchup does, at least in the past, favor the orcs because of our ability to fight on death, right? But the issues that it brings is just how efficient it is at killing us, even with something like this, these 5-man units of intercessors, right? Back in the day, before they, got their excellent rules, it was like, well, 10-man unit of intercessors, 5-man unit intercessors can't really hurt an orc unit. Only strength 4. They get up to strength 6, plus the abilities from the enhancements. From the detachment as well. And then when it's your go turn and you're like, well, I am going to fight on death here, then the Caladius assassin can increase that. So this becomes a more, potent matchup. But when you actually look at the tools he brought, right, he had the units to take the initiative from the Blood Angels to a certain degree, right? Even though your unit of Zagra is not necessarily going to be able to kill a sanguinary guard, right? The fact that he can run up, steal your enemy's natural expansion on the go turn, kill a unit of maybe assault intercessors, maybe kill a unit of scouts, flip that, then you also have to deal with the 20-man unit of battle wagon boys jumping out, hopping in the middle, or running into your lancers. Then you have all of the 10-man unit of knobs running in, getting stuck in a fight, popping critical 5+. There's all this just kind of chungus and a lot of wounds. And they also pack a punch behind anything that isn't chungus with a lot of wounds, which is what Blood Angels would end up kind of losing in that, because typically orcs don't always have the initiative on them, but Zod helps you kind of close that distance a lot of the times, and then it helps you deliver the other 20-man units, the boys, everything, because the enemy knows Zod. They see him and they know what he can do, but they'll still underestimate him. And he still himself is getting efficient at killing, kind of intercessor kind of bodies. So I typically, would say it's a lot also matchup dependent when you're going into a Blood Angels list, but Michael seemed to have a good time there. 87-point victory for that get. Then you move into his third matchup. We have a Grey Knights, so the Banishers. We have Castle and Crow and the Grandmaster. 2 units of Terminator squads of 5-mans, right? That was 5-man. Yeah, it was. 3 5-man units of strike squads, 2 rhinos, 1 unit of inceptors, a big O units of paladin, and a big O unit of purifiers. Very, very elite army. Now, the fact that Armor of Contempt changed in the way it did changed this matchup for us in some ways as well. When it's all infantry, honestly, it was not really ever that much of a problem. But when they went into their kind of Dread Knight spam, right, that could be more of a problem. Now, I would just say that it is an activation thing for these guys, right? They're all kind of exposed. There's a little bit that are in a rhino that I think typically, not the strike squad. It would usually be the big purifier squad. I think that would go in that rhino. But in the big paladins, right? They're trying to kind of big meet you with the paladins. 360-point unit. Orks absolutely love that you have something like that. Knobs would love to go into your paladins typically, and other units that we have on the list are still having a good time against you. Of course, your mortal wounds are important when going into Grey Knights because they are all 2-up armor save army, so you do have to be careful of that. But the fact that he has just the ability to saturate the field and get the initiative off on Grey Knights, I would say Blood Angels, on Grey Knights, at some point, regardless of their shenanigans, they're playing the mid-table objectives, right? And at that point, that's when Orks actually like to take it. So whenever you're playing Blood Angels, I was too busy looking at Blood Angels. Whenever you're playing Grey Knights, it is important to push them back and not have the space to dissect you from long angles or combine arms you and your trucks and pick your armies apart. It is, a little daunting when at first you're going into them and they have these big, super hyper killing efficient units. But the way that you're playing the game nonetheless, right? It's, well, I'll put Zod into your stupid paladins, right? I'll kill everything else. If I have to, depending on mission, if I have to kill them, or if it's too easy that you've baited me, and in the case that not all my enemies can focus on it, pick it up, and it changes the game, sure. But Zod lets you choose. Well, I'm not going to go for the paladin squad with my killing assets. I'm going to kill everything else, and then Hotar put that thing in place. Or, oh, no, you know what? I'm going to go just flip the objective on the enemy, make them commit fully into that. And now that they're playing the mid-table, I just kind of dump them all over the field. It's a 91-point win on that. So shout out to the Great WAAAGH for that one, Mr. Michael. And we'll move on to number 4, which is where he actually took his loss, which was into the Eldar Aspect Host. I still have that up. I actually had the notes up for that. And Eldar Aspect Host. That's what I thought. I was like, I had that. So let's take a look at these shenanigan gets, and then I'll tell you what their rule, a little bit of their rule on some things to look out for. Oop. Not too much. I can't say too much because I haven't played this exact version of Eldar yet. We have Artark, Fugin, Janzar, Slilax, Magan Ra. So very similar to the other list we've seen. Storm Guardian, Wave Serpent, Dark Reaper, Falcon, Fire Dragons, 2 units of Howling Banshees, Rangers, Striking Scorpions, 2 units of Swooping Hawks, and then a Warp Spider unit. So let's take a look at the rules. Maybe these are the same Eldar rules. Maybe I'm just talking smack about Eldar. Because I don't know. Are you guys biased against Eldar too? You guys like that too? Oh, I did have that up. Oops. So let's take a look. I just realized I kept his list up and didn't get to show you guys the list. So we'll show you the list again. Don't worry. But ultimately, Aspect Warriors and the Avatar of Cain get to reroll hits of 1, and then they get to reroll wound rolls of 1 whenever they make an attack. They have some interesting strats in the shooting phase. Each time you use a stratagem, you can remove 1 aspect token, then select one of the following abilities, or select 2 of the following abilities if you remove an aspect shrine token during this usage of this stratagem. So you can pick one or two. You can either choose ignore cover or sustained or lethal or a mixture of both for some of those units as well. And just themselves, Eldar have the, all the nice little shenanigans that they like to do, increasing range of their weapons. And like we were saying when we started the stream, movement wins games, right? And I can show you the list again because sorry, I had you guys not looking at the screen. So we're going to talk about it one more time. Artark, Fugan, Janzar, Slilax, Moggen Raw, Storm Guardian, Wave Serpent, Dark Reaper, Falcon, big unit of Fire Dragons, one unit of Howling Banshee, two of them, two small units of Howling Banshees, a Ranger, one Striking Scorpion Squad, and then two big units of Swooping Hawks and one small unit of Warp Spiders. So this one, from what I could gather, right, because you would assume that you can actually get this kind of pressure off on these guys. Not all the time, right? Because they do have their movement shenanigans with their Warp Spiders, a lot of move blocking going on, getting assured outcomes to pop your transports and kind of gang up on the guys that are inside. But, I did want to know what mission that was or what layout that was, because it was actually a pretty, it seemed like it was a pretty intense fight, 30-point loss there. So yeah, as for the Eldar game, if Eldar can kind of take off on you as the Ork player, choose, the terms of engagement, then that's how that game kind of ends up that way. Doesn't mean I don't think we have a good time against them. Most of the time when I play them, with Warhorde, it has been a running down. But the times that it did lose, it was because they did have the capability to slow me based off the terrain layout and the missions we were playing. Slow me in certain sides of the field with their Warp Spiders. And dropping down Swooping Hawk, stuff like that, and then dissecting my army when I have like my SWAT teams, right? A truck is very easy for an Eldar to pop and then try to get to gather the stuff from the inside. So hard loss there, but it happens. And then you move to the last game, which you got a 100-point win here in Redemption for dealing with this pointy ears. We have Adeptus Astartes, the Dark Angels, Wrath of the Rock. So I think this is a new one. I think I have one game against this. I think that's exactly what this is. I'll look it up again to double check because I for somehow I didn't notice that. Dark Angels, Wrath of Rock. I think this is the newest. This is like the newest one they just got, right? Yeah, it looks like it. Okay, cool. So we have Azrael, Lionel Johnson, Captain with Jump Pack, Lieutenant with Combi Weapon. 5-man unit of Assault Intercessors, a big 10-man unit of Assault Intercessors, 3 5-man units of Deathwing Knights, some Infiltrators, a 5-man unit of Infiltrators, Invader ATVs, 2 of them, and a Inner Circle Companions unit. Always very, very elite as Dark Angels, from what I've seen, from what most of their lists that they run. This is the one that this detachment is where if someone's stronger than you, you get -1 to wound. So that's pretty nice as it compounds with some of the other abilities. Like Inner Circle can be -1 to hit. I think when they're in that unit, like when they have a character leading that unit, Azrael gives them +1 to hit. And you have Lionel Johnson. This is also the detachment that if you're within, I believe, 6 inches of a unit, they can declare a charge on you. So a lot of like heroic intervention shenanigans going off here. But I did find Zod to be quite important in this case because they don't have the ability to like fall back and charge, for example. And they're going to typically put the Deathwing Knights into Deep Strike or something. So I found early, I think it was turn 2, kind of just get down the field and hold them in their deployment zone. And just pick up their weak stuff and not really go for Lionel Johnson. I don't even think I killed him in that game early. I think it took me a while. It's like, you'll have to move block them with your other assets so that maybe Zod himself doesn't get killed too early. You want to keep that -1 to wound to kind of keep them tar pitted. And they're going to punch you quite, respectably, but they're not going to kill the whole unit. And in that case, you're still delivering the 20-man unit of boys, and then you're stretching their units out, and they have to split their attacks, and they just don't have the activations or the punches. So that's what I really liked about how his kind of list worked with the Zod and the 20-man unit of boys, because as enemy armies are being OC bombed and the primary objective with these 2 big bricks, the rest of your army is picking apart their fighting assets or their scoring assets. you know, and if they just turn around and deal with those guys, well, then your primary dudes are just going to stay flipping primary on them. So enemy ends up having to deal with it, have to deal with the -1 to wound strat, have to deal with the fight on death strat. So they're taking losses, getting their noses bloody consistently all the way down. So I appreciate this list. We have a beast boss, 1 boss Snickrot for infiltration to make way for Zagra Wartsnaga, triple war bosses because who doesn't want a good old war boss and war horde? 20-man unit of beast snagga boys filling the way that the 20-man unit of boys can't right now. But we do have a 10-man unit for that sticky, 3 trucks, 1 battle wagon, 1 breaker boy unit, 1 flashgate unit, 1 5-man knob unit, and then a big 10-man knob unit, which we like to see, right? It's always back and forth for me with that love on that 10-man knob unit. It doesn't necessarily punch up into the tough units that we need, but it does do the job against elite infantry just from its pure volume, right? A breaker boy will definitely break the back of a vehicle or a monster, but it can hurt elite infantry and stuff, but it lacks the wounds, right? So in this case, knobs is more for that delivery on some of these elite infantry units, and gets the most value from each strat. So let me know if you're still using 10-man units of knobs. But I absolutely love my flash kits. Absolutely love my Zagra Wartsnaga. So we hope to see what Warhorde looks for the future. But thank you, Michael, for your Warhorde list. And can we get a wall in the chat from Mr. Michael and his great wall and his performance with the Warhorde? So with that being said, that's it for WAAAGH Wednesday. Let me take a look at the chats again right now because people are saying stuff. So as for the leaks, like I can say, so let me look at what this. Actually, let me look at what the poll says. Let me look at the poll says. I'll tell you guys right now. I just voted as well. Are you guys still voting right now? Let me see. Let me get this up. I'm gonna put it. I'm gonna vote as well. Let me get this. Shout out to you guys. But it looks like it was a good vote. So you guys got the last couple seconds in right now if you haven't done it for the poll, for the live poll right now. But as it stands, we got Bully Boys and Green Tide, more DACA at 26, and then Tactical Brigade. If your detachment didn't get in here, it's because in YouTube you're only allowed to do 4. So yeah, you're only allowed to do 4 options. So yeah. As for these gifts, let's end this poll. If you guys would get some last votes in real quick to break this tiebreaker. But as for what I think Bully Boys are going to get a little love from this data slate, maybe Tactical Brigade. Not sure about Warhorde. But all in all, Orks are still doing good in the meta if you put the work in with a certain list and attachment. If you're a casual player, you're definitely feeling the burn. Even if you're intermediate, even if you're playing somewhat competitively in certain places and have the hardest matchups, you know, you can definitely be facing some hard times. But there's definitely Ork players that are still getting performances out there, which means it's not necessarily a dead book. It just needs some love, right? Some books, they need a complete point, like rule changes and rewrites. I did give an argument for giving a rewrite to Swing Hog Boys, right? So I'm on your guys' favor for that 100%, and I'm very aware of that. But I don't think our codex itself needs a deep rewrite to function. So I do think a points change will be really welcome and just introduce us to having just a little bit more stuff, getting our identity back as being able to play with like a lot of assets that are, you know, moderately respective and offensive and playing the mission, but then easy to push over so the enemy gets some, you know, balance in there, but still allows us to use our cunning gets and our aggression to win games. So yeah, Orks. So let me end that poll now because I think it's time. And not gonna say I'm necessarily surprised, but Bully Boys did barely push through with 32%. Bully Boys for the most promoted detachment that people hope are getting a win in this data slate. Then we have Green Tide as 28, more DACA as 25, and 14 as Tactical Brigade. So interesting to see because Tactical Brigade did get a lot of love and it was known as the DACA detachment. So the fact that Tactical Brigade just kind of felt, you know, doesn't seem to be getting like people want necessarily too much love for it. Little surprising, but I think it just speaks to the fact that Orks really want to play by what our nature is, which is Bully Boys for double wall or Green Tide to play the field and mobbing, right? And then of course some more DACA love because I think people love that combined arms capability that comes from that, and that it's not too restrictive as a detachment, that you can make it work almost as like combined arms version of Warhorde. So it needs a little bit of love. People can see the potential there, but you know, Everybody has their own. So let me know in the chat what you guys think in the comments after the video for the rewatch, gang. So with that being said, we have the Kult of Speed archetypes video coming out. So that was a different list of how you play Kult of Speed. And so much more on the channel. So of course, keep a lookout for that. And one thing to keep in mind is don't cross our wall, because we'll knock your teeth out. Whoa.